He's staring at me. Luke Davin.
I get to go first.
Yay!
Yeah! There is not a rivalry more ferociously contested in nature or human society, more violent possibly than the rivalry between people who drive cars for money, cabbies, and people like myself who ride bikes as their primary means of transportation. And that is not just in New York City or American cities where you may be terrified to ride a bike yourself, but also overseas. I think it is as universal as cabs and bikes. I was in Japan. I was teaching English. I was teaching a special one-off class to my students there about superheroes. I got to pick the topic. I was a nerd when I was a child. And you know, comics are extremely popular in Japan, but none of them are superhero comics. They're all comics about real everyday people at the limit of their experiences, like the best surgeon in the world, or a high-profile baseball player, or an aspiring young chef. There's no men big in tights with eye lasers, and in order to endear these people into the big men in tights with eye lasers that I loved from my youth, I had my students come up with their own superheroes. And this one student, I nicknamed him Skebe-san. The word skebe, he's the reason I learned the word skebe in Japanese, and it means pretty much what it sounds like it means. He was a scumbag, just very sleazy. He got kicked out of the class. Like 2 weeks later for harassing one of the female teachers and just generally trying to hit on every female in the room all the time. And his hero was named Taxi Man. And this did not endear himself to me at all. When he drew Taxi Man, it was this round-faced man, cabbie hat, weaselly little eyes, which was not unlike himself. And Taxi Man's nemesis, of course, was Bike Man. And Bike Man, in his story, had somehow caused some sort of financial ruin to befall Taxi Man. And so Taxi Man lost his wife and his home, and he lived in his cab taking fares and scouring the streets for revenge, which isn't really a hero archetype, and I didn't really want to go into that with him, though, because he was that sort of creepy where it's borderline dangerous and you don't really want him to remember you later. So I let it go. Until about 4 months later, I'm riding my bike in the middle of nowhere, about an hour south of Osaka. It's just houses and rice fields. It's really quiet, and it's a big empty road, and I'm just biking back and forth on my way to Family Mart. It's like a convenience store. And I'm enjoying myself, but I see headlights start to come up behind me, so I pull over to the side of the road, and I'm biking very politely, and the car comes up behind me, but it starts following me. It won't pass me. I don't know if they're afraid of the fact that I'm too close or whatever, so I go way over to the side of the road, and they're still following me, and I stop, and they're just sitting there. And I look at them, and I yell, like, hello? Nothing, just high beams. Boxy white car. And I don't know if this is maybe a good neighbor moment, because in Japan you'll go to cross the street and you don't see cars anywhere, but it's a don't walk sign, and out of nowhere a businessman will just slap you in the chest and in very terse Japanese explain that we do not do that here. But he's looking out for you, really. It's in your best interest because there's some sort of karmic resonance in Japan where retribution comes swift and it is severe. I drove a car once in Japan. I didn't have a license. It was not more than 20 minutes before I had racked up a $3,000 fine, basically. 300,000 yen. It's that quick. They will find you. And so I didn't know what I was doing wrong. But there was a good neighbor moment. I wanted it to at least be in bright lights in front of a witness, and I saw the Family Mart down the street, and so I hurried down there, and to my relief, as I pull into the Family Mart, this car drives off, and it pulls off to the left. I'm like, all right, and I go into the Family Mart, and I get my stuff, and I'm on my way out, and it's this like horror movie moment where you flick the lock of your bike, and as the metal clicks, those high beams come on in the distance, and you see that boxy outline of the white car again. And I pull onto the street, and he pulls onto the street, and he's honking his horn and following me. Just fast enough that I have to bike faster, and it's really comfortable. He's just obviously just being an asshole, but I can't see him, and I can't tell if it's like a friend of mine fucking with me, or if it's some xenophobic mass murderer. And I don't want to just go there and say that everybody in Japan is xenophobic, because there's a lot of beautiful people there, but it only takes one to ruin the party. And right when I got to Japan, there was a girl, a teacher from Britain, and she was living in Tokyo, and long story short, they found her body in her boyfriend's bathtub under a bunch of potting soil, and he escaped under the fire escape and up over the rooftops and was still at large during the time of the story. I didn't want to fear for my life, and I didn't want to give this asshole the thrill of the chase if he's just out to be, you know, these people exist here, they're called rednecks over there. Apparently they make them in this factory where they just pump out these round-faced, weaselly-eyed little men that drink too much and don't like anybody else. So I see my right turn and I speed up real fast and then I take it at the last minute and he pulls up onto the curb. And I see this round face, these weaselly little eyes, and I pull up to his driver's side, and in my politest Japanese, I ask him if maybe I don't know him very well, but who are you and what do you want? And it's not even a word that they answer with, it's this noise that I hated from my class. But here it wasn't even like questioning, it was just antagonistic, and I'm gonna back up from the mic, it's... And it's like 1 in the morning and I don't have time for this and I go, okay, shitsurei shimasu, very polite, I'm leaving now, and I bike off into the ramen mess that is the streets that lead to my house, because like they take all the area that wasn't a rice paddy and they spilled ramen on it and drew lines and built houses. And along these very narrow roads they have these very, very deep gutters to let all the rain go by, because all it does in June is rain. And so I'm narrowly avoiding these deep gutters, and this guy's following behind me, and I'm trying not to let my heart go out through my throat, and I hear this enormous bang that almost makes me crap myself, and I turn around and I look, and his right front wheel is gone into one of these gutters. And I think about this Japanese fairy tale of like a very nice young man who's lost in the woods, and he sees this wounded badger, and he decides to tend the badger and feed it, and then the badger is a magic monk, and it gives the hero some like fantastic boon. And I think about the very neighborly way that I myself was raised, and I look back at this drunken asshole slamming on his horn and spinning his wheels, and I get the fuck out of there, because there's no way I'm spending another moment in this man's presence. And I abandon him, I tear off, and no longer does my shadow get cast in front of me, and I'm doubling back to make sure he's not following me, and I think maybe I'm safe, and I come to like one last big road, I cross this road, I take a right, I'm home. And there's that moment like in the dream when you know subconsciously you're fucking with yourself because the horrible thing that is about to happen, you imagine it happening in detail and you can't stop at add detail, and then the thing happens and you know it's your fault, and I'm crossing the street and I see the boxy white car, but it can't be the same boxy white car because I'm not in a Freddy Krueger movie, but you're halfway through the street and the lights come on and you freak out and you peel off, now biking for your life down these streets, and I don't want to go back to my house because I have other gaijin friends there and maybe this xenophobic asshole's going to kill us all and wear our faces, so I'm taking lefts and rights blindly, and of course you hit a dead end. At the end of one ramen noodle there is a loading dock, and this guy pulls in behind me and my own shadow is cast above me on this corrugated aluminum door 2 stories tall, and if this was an American story, this would be when the superhero jumps down and he punches the guy in the face and I get to go and eat ice cream. But I was in Japan, and retribution is swift and it is severe, and I steeled myself for the horrible thing I was sure was about to happen to me, and I wedged my bike along his passenger side window between his car and the brick wall of the loading dock, and in English I say, okay, what do you want? And he goes, you American, what the age? And I look at him. Is this to be expected in Japan? You will just be at the store minding your own business and someone will want to use every English word they know in a nonsense sentence, and you have to smile, you have to take it. This is what you get paid for. And this was my moment, because I was a coward, and this was my retribution for my cowardice, was being trapped at the end of this line. But now, this man just wanted a simple English lesson, and I was going to give him one. I said, I don't know who the fuck you are, good night. And I squeezed my bike out from behind his car, and I took off into the night, and he was stuck in the loading dock. He was trying to turn around. I made a little distance between myself and him, and I see this brightly lit garage with a little triangle of dark, and I receive my fantastic boon. I bike straight for the dark. I jump off my bike and kick it up, and I fucking ninja vanish into the shadow. I see his lights go by on the street. I wait. My heart rate doesn't go down. His lights go by again. My heart rate slowly comes into focus. I'm thinking about all the ninja reading that I did when I was 14. His lights pass again, and then it's like 10 minutes of stillness, and it was the most Batman thing I will ever do in my life, and it felt amazing. Thank you.